Welcome to the webinar, Changing Hospitalities with Streamlined Data and Payment Processes, brought to you by Stay in Touch, Merchant Link, and Ingenical Group. I'm your host, Frigola, and I'm joined by my panel of experts. First off, from Stay in Touch, Madi Tadmore. With over 20 years of hospitality industry experience, Madi is a seasoned product expert. Joining the tech hospitality industry, Madi also worked in hotels, allowing him to better understand the industry and businesses, helping customers in their project needs. Before joining Stay in Touch, Madi was responsible for the development of multiple hospitality software products with a focus on CRM, loyalty, business intelligence, central reservation systems, channel distribution, and revenue management systems. Joining us from Merchant Link is Christian McMahon. For over 10 years, Christian has helped Merchant Link develop advanced payment solutions for the hospitality industry. Christian's technical and operational knowledge has been critical in the development of new products for the challenging lodging sector. Christian has product managed the integration of Merchant Link Payment Gateway, Transaction Vault, and Transaction Shield to major property management systems and major hotel chains that are customers of Merchant Link today. Joining us from Ingenical Group is Alan Friedman. Mr. Friedman has over 30 years of experience in the payment industry in various roles, including retail management, acquire processing, product management, and technical business communications. He is a board member at the Smart Card Alliance, serves on the steering committee of the U.S. Payments Forum, and certified Smart Card Industry Professional Payments. He is a regular contributor to industry forums with published articles in Banking Technology Magazine and PYMTS.com surrounding the U.S. EMV initiatives. In addition, to maintaining an active speaking circuit, including the U.S. Payments Forum and Electronic Transaction Association. Now, with that said, I want to thank our audience for joining us and encourage you all to engage in the discussion. You can use the chat box to submit your questions and comments at any point throughout the presentation, and we will address them at the conclusion of this webinar. That being said, I'll quickly run through the agenda and we'll get started right after. We'll begin the discussion by addressing the challenges the hospitality industry is facing in regards to payment security. Our presenters will discuss the impact of using cloud solutions to avoid liability, why it's beneficial to bring payments to the consumer through mobility, the importance of implementing a multi-layered security approach to secure guest card data, and choosing the right technology solutions for your property. We'll then get to the audience questions and comments thereafter. So let's get started. Before we get to our first discussion point, I'd like our audience to take part in our first poll. And here is the first poll just now about to be launched. Does your hotel deploy a multi-layered security approach to secure guest card data? I'll give you guys about a minute and a half to participate, and then I will launch the poll results. All right, about 30 seconds here, or 15 actually. All right, closing the poll now and sharing the results. Does your hotel deploy a multi-layered security approach to secure guest card data? 35% said yes, 47% said somewhat, 6% said no, and 12% said I'm not sure. Well, that's what we are here for, to give you guys a little guidance in that regard. All right. All right, the challenges the hotel industry is facing in regards to data and payment security. I'm going to pose that first question, that first topic to Christian, if you want to go ahead and touch on that.
Sure, thanks. Hi, everyone. So the general point here is that payment data security, especially in the hospitality industry and especially in the hotel environment, is very daunting and complex. Most of the systems have a wide variety of technology deployed within them, and they have to compete against all the new PCI regulations, as well as some of the card brand regulations. And when I say card brand, I'm talking about like Visa, MasterCard, American Express. Those are the card brands. And then the ever-evolving threats and vulnerabilities that are trying to hack into all of our systems. So choosing the right security products and processes are key to success in achieving not only PCI, but also true security. Okay?
All right. Alan, you want to touch on a point?
Sure. So in hospitality, you've got such a wide variety of point-of-sale potential uses depending upon your business model. Not only the front desk, but also gift shops for retail. You've got restaurants, cafes, for card present. You know, sometimes they don't bill it to the room. You want to use their card, and in that case, the card disappears from the consumer perspective. They don't know who has it. They don't know what they're doing with it. And unfortunately, sometimes it's not necessarily the property that is being compromised, but from a data perspective, but they could be blamed as a source of providing fraudulent, providing cards to unauthorized users. So it's there's multiple layers and multiple concerns, not only to protect your data, but to protect your reputation. ENV helps on all those fronts, as do other things like encryption.
All right, Marty, from your perspective, what are some of the challenges that are facing the hotel industries in regards to the payment?
Sure. So Alan and Christian touched most of the points that are common and known to many people in the industry, but I wanted to touch base more a little bit about common risks that are facing this industry, which are shared with other industries as well. So we know about crime rings, organizations that are trying to get a hold of data sets for espionage purposes or for financial gain purposes. They're trying to grab some data that contains client data as well as payments data. We all hear about that almost every day, so there's some risks there. But I think the other points are not only involved in the actual crime rings or crime per se, but things like the business itself, who is changing every day. So I think Christian and Ellen both touched on that a little bit. There's transactions with card present or not present. There's transactions that are for different entities of the hospitality industry. So you may have a hotel where, from an operation perspective, is also running 3 restaurants, and those restaurants are not necessarily owned by the same hotel organization or chain or brand. And operationally, they still want to consolidate transactions and see all of them in one place, but how do I do that from a management perspective, from an operational perspective, from a maintenance perspective, device installation, implementation? So there are many, many challenges, and the more we want to satisfy the customers, the more we want to maintain our relationships with the guests, the difficulty it becomes to actually maintain all those aspects of the business.
All right, thank you guys. Some great insight there from our panel to start off this discussion, and we are going to go into our first presenter slide section with Marty Tadmore talking about cloud solutions and lifting the burden off of hotels.
Right, so we just talked about some of the challenges, and so I think it's time to talk about how do we help each other. So how do we get that burden off of our plates, and how do we make the operational a little bit easier? So the scope of this webinar is mainly about cloud and secured payments and secured devices that are helping hotels basically get this easier. So when you want to lift the burden off of your operations, off of your hotels, what do you need to do? So you need to choose something that's not physically in the hotel, that cannot be grabbed by someone like we talked about earlier. You want to use a well-known and proven solution. So talk to other people, ask around, see what hotels that are very similar like you in operation are doing, which vendors are they using, does it work for them, does it not work for them? Try to look at a solution that fits your specific operation. So don't say, well, I'm a medium to a small hotel, I probably need to go full blast, everything and all the bells and whistles that the industry can offer. There may be some tailored solutions that are good for you. They can still be in the cloud, they can still be secured enough, but they will not be a burden on your operations. And lastly, choose what allows you to satisfy your clients. So basically, you want to stay secured. You want the vendors to help you maintain your operations with as minimal effort as possible for your operations, so you can really focus on satisfying and helping your guests. Next slide. So how do I do that, right? So if I'm a hotel, how do I choose the solution that's right for me? So you got to ask yourself some questions. Is my staff going to be more involved or less involved? If I now try to implement a better solution in the cloud and with a payment gateway company or with new devices, is this going to be more difficult for my staff? Am I going to be now, increasing the time to check in a guest from, I don't know, a minute to 5 minutes, and so on and so forth? Usually when you move over to the cloud and you're using vendors that are already connected one to another in a secured manner, the answer would be no. You're actually decreasing staff involvement and you're decreasing the time it takes to perform your operations. Same goes for costs and hardware. Do I need to install anything extra? Do I need to add some servers into my hotel? Will someone have to maintain them? Am I exposing myself to security risks? So in other words, if I have a server now that's hosting a payment gateway or my PMS for that sake, what are the risks involved in that? Can someone somehow get a hold of my data? If that data is now destroyed because of a crash or a fire or a flood, am I putting myself in trouble? So there's a lot of questions to ask yourself when it comes to the security risks and the extra hardware. And finally, am I aligned with industry standards? Am I doing something that everybody else is doing, or am I completely opposite of the industry trend? Not always good to follow the trends right away, but obviously if there's something that's proven and is working for everybody else, we should probably try to follow the same trend, especially if it's helping you to lift the burden off of your operations. Next slide. So the next slide is a little bit about traditional property management system versus the cloud versions of them. So on the left side, we can see that the traditional ones are an on-premise hardware. There's a server that's needed usually. Obviously, when you have servers or hardwares or machines, you need someone to maintain them as well. And there's, in most cases, if you are Windows operating system based and you need some maintenance with Windows updates and upgrades, and the property management system vendor will also have to maintain the upgrades and installations for you. And of course, there's a cost involved with all of that. There's labor cost, there's hardware cost, you need to maintain your network, you need to do upgrades, and you need to always make sure that everything is in line. Same from the amount of or possibilities of devices. I know that this world is becoming a little bit better. Even if you're self-hosted or on-premise, you can probably introduce some of your operations to better devices or tablets or mobility, but it's very limited and it's not as easy. If we look at the left side of the same diagram, when you talk about cloud PMS, you don't really need to worry about the hardware itself. You don't need to worry about the automated updates from the cloud that will basically be given to you automatically by the vendors. And everything is managed by someone else. So it is almost paying the same amount, but you're not really worrying for what you need to maintain or how you maintain it. And usually the cost will also be decreased when you choose this solution. The biggest bang for the buck, in my opinion, is that when you choose such a system in the cloud, not only that you gain benefits that you can now focus on helping your guests and you're not worried about hardware in the hotel and maintaining all of that and worrying about the updates and the Windows servers. Now you also have the possibility to benefit and improve your guest-facing operations. So if you think about cloud property management systems, Now you can talk about mobility. Instead of facing that front desk agent that sits behind or stands behind the desk and stares at a monitor, with his head down, now someone can just walk with the tablet in his hand through the lobby and welcome the guests and share the same screen with them on an iPad and scan their credit card right there and then. And it's the whole experience is a lot better and a lot aligning with what modern world and technology offers people. Talking just a little bit about the right side of our slide, basically that's what I just mentioned from a guest engagement perspective. When you talk about cloud solutions, your guest engagement is improved. You have more accessibility to your guests. You can talk to them more. You can talk to people eye to eye. You can show that you care. You can increase guest satisfaction. And the whole experience basically changes. Your staff will be more efficient because now they go around with the tablet. They can satisfy the guests right away. They don't have to try to, take their eyes off of the screen and take a look at the guests and then put their eyes back on the screen down below in a front desk. Which again, the right side of that lacks most of that experience and is kind of difficult for us to do. So just in general, looking at the monetary value all the way down at the bottom. So when you move yourself away into the cloud, now you can save some money and you can make even more money because now you can do upsells and upgrades a little bit easier. You can do some offers on the fly through a tablet in a good property management system, and it's easier for your staff to push those upsells, to be more engaged with your guests and talk to them with a smile on their face, which is a little bit easier when you're not behind a front desk. So all in all, bottom line is your ROI will increase when you move to the cloud. Next slide. So how do you know that you chose the right solution, right? So you want to know that you did everything that we talked about so far. How do you know? How is it proven? So when you use the technologies to lift the burden off of your property, and you don't need any special hardware, and your hotel, your staff is operating everything that we talked about before, you know that you made the right solution, that you made the right choice, and you've chosen the right solution. If you actually keep yourself secured, so you choose the right solutions that allow you to secure payments, to secure guest data, which my colleagues here are going to talk about in a few minutes in the next slides, you basically know that you made the right choice. If you can focus, and that's the most important thing about, I think about that slide specifically, if you are seeing your staff more engaged with your clients, and if you feel that your operations is now more free to deal with customers and provide what the hospitality is all about, which is basically service and the experience of the service, then you know that you made the right choice, because then your staff is free to do that stuff, and they're not as engaged with front desk and handling hardware and maintenance and so on and so forth.
All right, thank you so much for that, Madi. Really giving some of our audience insight into how they can take the burden off of their hotels, and then giving them some good insight as to how to find the right solution. So with that, we are going to jump right into our next audience poll, which is going to precede our next presenter. Launching the poll. What percentage of regions outside the U.S. use pay-at-the-table solutions? So give your best insight here, and then we will launch the results in about a minute. Right, about 20 seconds here. Okay, I'll go ahead and close the poll and share the results. What percentage of regions outside of the U.S. use pay-at-the-table solutions? 0% said none. It's a brand new concept. 21% said 25%. 42% of you said there are 50% of regions outside the U.S. that pay at the table solutions. And then 37% said there are 75%. And then no one said 100% because I don't think that is the right answer. All right, with that said, we are going to jump in to our next presenter, who is Ingenico Groups. Sorry, I have to share my screen. Okay, so Alan Friedman is going to be our next presenter at Ingenico Group. Mobility, offering the guest transparency and control with payment processes. Alan?
Hi, yeah, thanks. So we can go on to the first slide. One of the issues or challenges with EMV and hospitality in particular is that very often, aside from the front desk, which is typically fairly straightforward, although in some cases you will, instead of having a terminal or card swipe reader behind the counter, you have it at the front of the counter facing the guest, so that they can insert their card into the terminal. If a PIN is required, they can enter their PIN, and then they're in charge of that transaction. The current environment is it's actually inefficient. That toggle switch is in the wrong position, but it is costly. There are chargebacks. It's very difficult sometimes to dispute chargebacks, and it is from a consumer perspective, it's not secure. Stolen cards, counterfeit cards can easily be used not only for lodging but also for dining, also for gift shop purchases. I mean, lots of different things that you're vulnerable to. And even if even if you can defend against a chargeback, no one really wants a guest looking at their bill and thinking that your property has misbilled them. It's just not a great incentive for return business. Next slide. So pay at location, pay at table, pay at the counter, pay at check-in, or not necessarily pay, but present the card at check-in. You're using a POS terminal or tablet or some sort of device where the consumer can insert their card, and they can either write the tip on the receipt, which is what you do today, or there in many regions, and even in the U.S., there are PIN preferring cards, especially if they're debit cards, and if you want to use one of the many domestic debit networks, then they like PIN. So if you want to support PIN, then they can just enter the PIN on the machine, and the receipt prints, and they're done. There's nothing to sign, and that actually can speed up the transaction process, as long as they know their PIN. Next slide. And so in the dining area, or even in other areas where you offer the ability to add a tip, the tip can be on the on the machine at the time of transaction, and again, if you can still use a signature or the PIN from a verification method. So the payment processing steps, as you can see, the process for doing all of the different ways of processing the transaction, presenting the card for payment, getting the receipt to the consumer. It's a very smooth transaction flow, but having a server take their card away and come back with a receipt for them to sign, and that card not being visible or in the control of the cardholder, although it's typical and people are used to it, in some cases, especially if their card becomes compromised, they will start to think about when did they not have control of their card. And you, even if it was not your property that had an employee that was an issue, you don't want them suspecting you, because again, it's a reputational problem. Next slide. And here we see, so we remove several of these steps. We remove some of the vulnerability from a security perspective, and cut down the steps, make it faster, make it more convenient, and gives your guests a better feeling as far as controlling where their card is. Next slide. So there are a lot of options. You can wirelessly, you can do contactless payments. Most of the terminals are capable of contactless payments. It is when you certify your applications, it's a separate certification, but that allows customers to pay with their mobile wallets, with their phone. And one of the added advantages of paying with the mobile wallets is the mobile wallets can offer biometric authentication of the consumer, so that there's no PIN and no signature required. In the US, there's no dollar amount limit to what they can do with that biometric authentication, unlike some regions that have dollar limits for contactless transactions. We don't do that in the US because we're going to be probably more wallet-centric than we are plastic contactless card-centric. It does improve efficiency. It improves the customer engagement. The customer, I mean, right there, they have the machine, they put their card in, they get the receipt. There's less time lag from the time they are ready to pay to the time that they have the receipt and are ready to leave. Next slide. So what can you use? So we do have a variety of options. There are a lot of different options in the industry. So wireless terminals, and the wireless terminals are generally both wireless. They're wireless, and they can take magnetic stripe cards. They can take EMV cards. They can take contactless cards. Mobile POS terminals. So you can have a payment application on a phone or a tablet, and we offer card readers that connect securely to those devices. So you can turn a tablet or a phone into a payment terminal device by using one of our products that take the card securely. They provide the EMV technology, the EMV cryptogram, and they interface seamlessly with the applications on your mobile device using secure Bluetooth. We do have wireless terminals that actually have the receipt and everything built in. They're a handheld terminal, and they can connect to your network either via Bluetooth or Wi-Fi or 3G. Wi-Fi becoming the most popular fairly quickly, but the other solutions are available if they meet your business needs. Next slide. And
I think that's actually.
That's it.
Here we are. A nice segue. Thank you, Alan, for doing my job. But so we are going to jump into our next audience poll, which is, let me put that up on the screen here. When it comes to the front desk EMV chip versus touchless card on file check-ins, which of the below is more important to you? Chargeback liability shift or guest convenience and experience? I'll give you guys about a minute and a half to go ahead and choose one of the options, and then I'll launch the results. About 20 more seconds here. All right, that does it. I am launching the results now. When it comes to front desk EMV chip versus touchless card on file check-ins, which of the below is more important to you? 26% said chargeback liability shift, and 74% said guest convenience and experience. Well, we are going to address that now with Christian McMahon up. Speaking of the importance of a multi-layer security approach to securing guest card data and payment. Christian?
Hey, everybody. Yep, I'm here. It's Christian. So, yeah, if we can go to the slide. Got to figure out which slide we're
on. What's the number on that slide?
20, or sorry, 21.
21.
21. All right. Well, do we know if we're on slide 21? I'm still showing the poll results.
Oh, let me hide the results then. All right, so you should see the slide.
Thank you. I worked very hard on this mobile slide. Hey everyone, I'm Christian McMahon, and product manager here at Merchant Link, and I'm going to talk a little bit about some of the complexities within, especially the PMS environment and the hotel environment, on data security, and then want to address what the poll question sort of was all about. But the first slide here is what I'm famously calling internally in our company the bubble slide. So it's trying to express to an audience how difficult actual total security is in a hotel environment. There are many, many points of entry for credit card data, as well as other types of payment data that we haven't really even addressed yet, like check data and gift card data, all kinds of payment-related data that flow into a hotel. And if you're a full-service resort, you might have spa and golf systems, as well as POS, as well as restaurant, as well as all kinds of other types of channels that may be providing credit card data into your hotel systems. And that makes it particularly challenging to try to address all of those channels with applications or processes to try to secure that data. But I can tell you that in my experience so far, the single largest channel of credit cards that come into a hotel environment is through the reservation channel. There are lots and lots of credit cards being passed back and forth through the reservation channel. So that one I think is of particular note of where a lot of the credit card transactions actually do originate from. The good news is, though, that most of these channels of payment card data that are coming into a hotel have been solved for in one way or another. Now, whether they've all been solved for in one consolidated, concise manner, or if it's piecemeal, system by system, the good news is that all of the payment providers, and when I say payment providers, I'm talking about gateways or the actual processors or other types of companies that provide security solutions, have tried to address all of these systems in one form or another. The interesting thing, though, is that I probably should have put a lot of the web and the e-commerce bubbles in a larger frame, because that is where a lot of the technology is currently driving. So many people are heading towards mobile solutions and web-based solutions to supplant some of the older architecture that are currently in hotels. Okay, we can go to the next slide. So MerchantLink, as well as other payment security companies, we are always preaching that you should have a layered approach to security. The two really basic foundations are tokenization. And for those of you that don't know, tokenization replaces a credit card with a value that's really meaningless outside of your environment. And it typically replaces credit cards within databases. So you're no longer storing that vast amount of credit card information in your system. You're letting somebody else store it in their system, and they just replace it with a value that represents that credit card. The other solution that is gaining in popularity is point-to-point encryption. So point-to-point encryption is almost a standard now in all of the modern devices that take a dip of an EMV card or take a swipe of the credit card that still have mag stripes, or even manually enter a card into a PIN pad when you have a manually entered transaction. The point-to-point encryption wraps that transaction up in an unbreakable packet and can only be unwrapped at another location off of your property. So the combination of point-to-point encryption and tokenization are two of the basic foundations of credit card security. The last one that I put on the slide is EMV. And EMV is, I think, less of an overall security method as it's an anti-fraud method. And there is a little bit of nuance in that particular arena, security versus fraud. But EMV does an awesome job in stopping credit cards from being duplicated. It verifies who's using the card at a much greater means than the magnetic stripe does. So the combination of these three technologies are pretty compelling. However, there are some other technologies on the horizon that actually either play very well with the current three foundations, or they'll compete against them. We just haven't seen where the market is going to evolve. And those involve the mobile products. So you could have people using their phones and tablets to check people in, which I think is one of the biggest sort of drivers of the industry at the moment. Many of the reservation systems already use something called virtual credit cards. So you'll get a value in the reservation that looks exactly like a credit card, but it's really just like a one-time use credit card, or it's a virtual credit card. That's a really good way of putting it. And then, as was mentioned before, there's alternate forms of payment also that are coming online too, including biometric payments, which I can't wait until somebody checks me in with a retina scan when I go ahead and do that. So let's go on to the next slide. Okay, so I've attended some hotel industry conferences within the last 6 months, and a common theme jumped out at me at each one of these conferences, and it's the issue between card on file check-in or the EMV credit card dip transactions. So at a lot of these conferences, there seems to be some odds at what is sort of the recommended approach. And maybe the answer is both. Maybe we have architectures that support both. Because card on file authorization check-ins usually support a better, I think, a guest experience where you no longer have to stop at a front desk. You can do pre-arrival check-ins through an app. You can actually check in using where clerks have a tablet on or near the front desk, or even at the front door, that can check you in as well as create a key card. Some phones now have the ability to to actually open your hotel room. So there's a seamless check-in process where you really don't need to stop by the front desk. But that's competing against the recent liability shift with EMV. Although there are some digital tokens that will give you a liability shift. So it all sort of winds up to a very complex process, and you really have to be careful on which technology that you're deploying within your environment. So if we can go to the next slide. So the last slide is just to express how complex this environment is. So I don't know if very many people know, but the card brands and also the PCI Council are constantly issuing new rules and regulations surrounding credit card payments. Some involve security, a lot involve security. Some involve process and convenience. For instance, some of the card brands have created a process called Quick Chip. And Quick Chip is designed to speed up the EMV authorization process. Whether that is a technology that hotels actually need is sort of a question mark. They also are going to start deploying incremental authorizations into the restaurant space for people that keep tabs at a bar. So instead of having to keep swiping somebody's card over and over again, you'll be able to do an incremental authorization very much like the hotel industry does. PCI has just released some new guidance on point-to-point encryption. So you could be a validated point-to-point encryption solution. You could be just plain old point-to-point encrypted. And then there are some nuances in between that I think are really important to understand. But I think the overall driving point here is that it is a very complex environment. And for someone to actually understand it all and be educated, it's going to be very challenging to keep up with it all. So if we can go to the last slide. So finding the right solutions is very important, but I think even more importantly is finding partners and people that can advise you on what types of technologies that you need to deploy throughout your hotel environment is even more key. Because it's really hard to expect somebody who's running hotel operations to keep up with all the credit card mandates and all the PCI Council mandates. I mean, I know we all rely on our QSAs to keep up with the security and our gateway partners to handle the new card brand mandates. So, but finding people that you think are going to understand all of the challenges within your environment is a very, very important aspect to actually being secure and finding that layered approach that's going to be right for your environment. And that's
all right.
it for me.
Yeah, I see. Thank you so much for all of your insights, all three of our panelists. You've heard them speak about and discuss the impact of cloud solutions to avoid liability, as well as the benefits of bringing payments to the consumer through mobility, and of course implementing a multi-layer security approach to secure guest card data. And they've each also talked about how to choose the right solution. So I hope you guys are walking away with some good insight as to what the next step is. But before we let you go, we do want to answer a couple of audience questions here. And Al, I'm going to start with you. Why do you think the U.S. has lagged in pay-at-the-table adoption?
Well, we have traditionally had the what we have in most cases now in the U.S. There are a few places that are implementing pay-at-table, but it's not anything like it is in Canada. Even, for example, if you go to Canada, go to a restaurant, it's going to be pay-at-table. And I think there's concern among merchants, the properties, and the restaurants that about the expenditure of additional equipment. So I think that as people get their EMV applications certified and in place, then the focus is going to be more on getting things like pay at table. So those who certified last year or even the year before, mostly last year, then they this year would be looking at implementing that pay at table solution, which often can use the same application that they use in their the same basic application that they might use in their gift shop. They're just adding the tip functionality and things like that. So there's been that. There's been the reluctance to there's a perception that taking a terminal to a guest at a table is imposing on the guest. And there's also a perception, because the guest could very well be inputting the tip into the payment terminal and the server is standing right there, that seems to be a point, they think that's uncomfortable. And yes, in some cases it might be, depending upon what the amount of the tip. But this is a standard practice in pretty much every other region in the world. And it, as guests and customers get the idea that this is more convenient for them and is more secure for them, then it gains traction pretty quickly.
All right. And Marty, next question for you. If we experience payment issues with a cloud PMS provider, would we contact the PMS provider or the third-party security provider?
Oh wow, that's actually an excellent question. So we talked about so many things that can help you lift off the burden, and Ellen talked about the beauty of modern devices that are best of line of technology that are available out there. Christian talked about the actual gateway and processing of the transactions, which again are using the latest technologies, always staying ahead with the technology, offering clients. And of course, I talked about the advantages of a property management or a PMS in the cloud. So speaking a little bit of my experience with integration of our product with the two providers, with Ingenico and with MerchantLink, of course, and I think that goes for everyone else who implements the same kind of technology. Everything is handled by your main system of operations, which would be your property management system. Now, you try to swipe a card and something happens, and then that happens every day. You have an error in the gateway, you have a network error, you have an error in the card itself, or it's even a valid error such as like, hey, I don't have balance on the card. Those are common scenarios of a day-to-day business. What I did see through our integrations are that the amount of information and the error handling of each and every one of those systems is so well defined and written so good by our development teams is that the property management system is able to output back the right response. So in many cases, even if you are standing with an iPad in a front desk or in the lobby of a hotel and you try to swipe a card and there is some error with that card, you will know immediately by the error message that you receive on the screen what exactly is going on and what do you have to do next. So I don't think there's so much of a need to call someone. There's less of a, hey, I need to call support. You're basically trying your best based on the output of the error that you get. So if it's a different error for a card, you can try a different card, or if it's a retry because there was some network issue, you can just retry the card again. But all of that is usually being handled from the property management system in a very, very well-defined way.
All right, and Christian, the last question is for you. Do you envision in the next 5 years that P2P encryption is going to become the norm in terms of gateway for payments?
I really do. That's a really good question. I really do, because I think that at least for the gateways as well as the credit card processors who offer direct processing solutions, all of the terminals that they are deploying that'll take an EMV dip or a magnetic read of the card are going to be point-to-point encrypted capable equipment. So I really do think that over time it will take over the industry.
All right. Again, thank all my panelists for being here, giving their great insight, and I hope you, the audience, walked away with something insightful today. And if you're looking for more information, or you want to ask more questions, give some comments, feel free to send over your comments and questions to info@stayintouch.com, and we will be sure to respond to that in a timely manner. Thank you again for joining our webinar. And this webinar recording and presentation will be available to everyone within 24 hours. If there needs to be some additional editing, just give us a little time for that. But for the non-attendees, they can't hear me, but they will also get the webinar recording. So thank you guys again for joining.